What's up guys, it's Raymond here with another video, and I want to talk about the importance of ego. Is it necessary for somebody to have an ego? A lot of people say having an ego is bad, this person's egotistical, this person's egocentric, but I personally believe, and that's why I created this video, that having an ego is very necessary for success and for drive, and that's what I want to be talking about in this video. So what is the ego? An ego, according to Sigmund Freud, is an aspect of the mind. The mind is divided into three parts: the ego, the id, and the superego. And the ego is necessarily is the part of the mind that deals with basic drives like the need for food, the need for water, the need for shelter, the need for friends, etc. But in terms of when people have a negative connotation to ego, or when they describe somebody as egotistical or showing an ego or having an ego, that what they mean is that the person is displaying arrogance or is displaying a sense of overconfidence, a sense of pride, a sense of believing in themselves too much, a sense of over assertion of the person's values or their presence. And I don't believe that this is a true connotation, or this is a true definition of what ego is, and I don't feel it's helpful for people to have negative connotations to ego. I believe ego is important because ego gives somebody a sense of self. It reassures you that you are a human being, you are alive, and it reassures you that you can get past a certain obstacle. It gives you a certain boost, a certain confidence that you can get past a certain obstacle. It's almost like a positive conscience, a positive voice in your head that's telling you that you can get past a certain goal. Without this ego, and I know some people might say that this is the wrong interpretation of ego, and I'll describe it again in a different way in a second. But for this particular definition that I've described, for this particular definition that I've described, I believe that it's very important because there's in life people go through many obstacles, people face many obstacles, and in order to get past those obstacles, one has to have an overly boosted sense of pride, an overconfidence in oneself, and sometimes it's very necessary to have an overconfidence in oneself, even though it might be blown out of proportion, and even though it might not be necessarily in line with reality. I mean, take the imagination. If the ego is such a negative thing to have, why is the imagination such a positive thing to have? Because if the ego is so out of touch with reality, the imagination is by definition out of touch with reality. So if being out of touch with reality is a negative thing, then I guess the imagination is negative as well. So why don't people scrutinize people with a big imagination? I mean, if the imagination, or if being out of touch with reality was a negative thing, then things like Marvel Comics, even businesses today, even the very fabric of reality today was a large aspect of reality today. So for example, economic systems, capitalism, was a lot of theories, scientific theories were based on imagination. So I believe that being out of touch with reality isn't necessarily a negative thing. I feel like being in touch with one's imagination, but not just being in touch with one's imagination, but being out of touch with reality, can actually show you, based on the fact that it's the opposite of reality, it can show you, it can give you a clearly defined understanding, or more of a understanding of what reality is. Take for example, flipping a coin or turning the lights off. Let me give you an example. Take for example turning the lights off. If I turn the lights off, I have a better understanding of what it's like for the light to be on, because there's an absence of light. Well, not completely, but there's more of an absence of light. And if I turn the light back on and I leave it on, if I had never turned the light off, I wouldn't have such a clear definition of what the opposite is. So I definitely feel like having an ego, or being out of touch with reality, in terms of having an overzealous or boosted sense of oneself, or boosted sense of confidence, is definitely appropriate for achieving certain goals. I definitely don't feel like it's important to have an ego when it comes to enforcing that ego or enforcing oneself on other people. But then again, a lot of things that people claim to be negative can not. It's not so simple to add the term negative or positive to some things. For example, just because something has an outcome that might harm people, it might not be negative in the larger sense. For example, say take the philosophical proposition. And when I was studying philosophy in university and college, they come up with this proposition quite often. If you're stuck with if you're the only person with the decision to either choose to allow a train to run over 5 people on the train track, or you have the choice to pull the lever and allow the train to diverge and change directions and kill one person, what option would you take? Considering that the train is on path to killing on path to hitting the 5 people. So a lot of people would say they wouldn't do anything, but in this particular circumstance, it would probably make more sense to pull the lever. But then some people say if you pull the lever, then you've directly caused the death of one person. But then some people say if you don't pull the lever, then you've directly caused the death of 5 people. So what is the positive outcome? So just because there is an outcome whereby somebody is hurt doesn't mean it's a negative a negative outcome. It might be negative to an extent, but it might have an action that has led to a negative outcome might have led to a more positive outcome than not acting at all. But anyway, back to the main point. Having an ego is necessary for achieving certain goals and ambitions, because if we were without an ego, or if we were take the example of sex drive. Some people claim that sex drive especially in males, because males have a larger sex drive than females. This has been scientifically proven. Sex drive pushes males to want to achieve high goals, and I feel like males in history have achieved high goals. So have women, but males in history have achieved very, very high goals, and some goals that males have reached, or some people look at these goals and they're like, or some people have looked at these achievements and they're very shocked, and they wonder how to what extent it was possible for this person to achieve this goal. And some people come to some superstitions that they were part of a secret society, etc. But anyway, just the mere fact that a lot of large scale achievements have been made by people in history, and I'm basing this achievement to a large extent on sex drive, is a very good analogy when it comes to ego, because ego is a drive. The same as sex drive, ego is a drive, and ego drives people to want to act, and it drives people to want to achieve big goals based on one's overinflated perception of themselves. So I don't feel it's a negative thing. I feel it's a very positive thing, because if your perception of yourself is based on reality, you can only go so far as achieving not much more than what you are. If you have a boosted sense of ego, or a boosted sense of one's perception of themselves, then you can set really high goals, and these goals might not necessarily be close to what you are in that current state. So I'm gonna stop mumbling, and I'm gonna end the video here. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.